All right, let's go ahead and move on here. Finally, some good news. You guys are always asking us for that good news. We've got it up there on the screen. Biden is actually going to do something useful for once. So, Biden is poised to use Cold War powers to boost battery metals. Now, it's a little odd that Bloomberg phrases Cold War powers as the Defense Production Act, but whatever. I guess that's what it takes here. The reason that this is important is that the Defense Production Act is the ability of the U.S. government, as we saw under the Trump administration with Operation Warp Speed and other pandemic-related matters, in order to use the federal government to encourage third-party sellers and commission actual industrial capacity in order to build something which is considered strategically important to the security of the United States. We've been talking a lot here about supply chains and batteries and electric vehicles specifically. There has been a race for over 20 years over the supply chains over batteries. The United States has lost that race. We have no chance of winning it, or at least in the near term. The only chance we have is to be competitive 15 years from now. I did a Realignment podcast once with a guy named Steve Levine, one of the world's experts on U.S. Battery supply chains. And he was apocalyptic in terms of how reliant we are on China. And a previous report that we brought you here on the show, let's put this up there, from the New York Times, who did actually an excellent investigation several months ago in November about the power struggle over cobalt rattles the clean energy revolution. And what they point to there is this Chinese scramble for the Congo, the Democratic Republic of the Congo's cobalt, which is a vital piece for electric vehicles and batteries. And actually, in terms of the actual supply chain here, the Chinese have been going all over the world and buying and controlling many of these mines. So I'll just read you here what exactly is processed, the most key elements in terms of electric vehicles. Copper, 40% of the world's copper is processed in China. Nickel, about 35% of the world's nickel is processed in China. A lot of it also comes from Krystal, Russia, which apparently we're not doing business with that nation anymore.
Not doing great. Great ties with them.
Cobalt, over 65% of the world's cobalt is processed in China. Rare earth metals, over 85% of the world's rare earth metals are processed in China. Lithium, about 60% of lithium in this world is processed in China. So when you consider both production and then process power, we are nowhere. We're not even on the map for a single one of these. It's been a total disaster. Part of the reason why, even in the Build Back Better plan, Biden was like, let's build electric vehicle highway first. You can't build a highway if you can't build the vehicles.
Right.
This is part of the problem that we have, and why Elon Musk has to go and kiss the ass of the Chinese, because they have built this huge electric battery supply chain there, all the rare earth metals, the processing power, the ability of the factories. We have none of that. Now, what this Defense Production Act would actually do is make it so that we could build processing power and the domestic production of key materials. It's all about both refining and the production of those materials in order to make it so that we can build the stuff here at home. And especially in a transition period away from fossil fuels, which will probably take 25, 35, 40 years. In that time, we have got an immense amount of work to do in order to build this up. So I do want to applaud the Biden administration here. This is an excellent use of the federal government's powers. It's exactly what we should be seeing for years on end. And I think it's better for all of us. Look, the cheaper we can make electric cars, and that's all. It's all about price. The cheaper that we can get it, we need, company neutral tax credits, unlike the ones that are currently being proposed, and drive the price down for the average consumer in order to use in their day-to-day commute. The better off that we're all going to be. But it's going to require a total redo of our entire supply chain. So I'm very, very heartened to see this.
Yeah, and by the way, I mean, this has downstream effects. So people who are able to switch to an electric vehicle, and by the way, there's massive demand right now, as you can imagine, with how high gas prices are. If they're able to buy the electric vehicles than they want, then that takes more pressure out of the gas market and makes gas prices lower for people who still have, traditional gas-powered vehicles. I can tell you from personal experience, you basically can't get an electric vehicle right now, which has more to do at the moment with supply chain issues and in particular, chip shortages, because the electric vehicles also take more chips than your average vehicle. So there's a lot of problems to work out here. I mean, I think this is to be applauded. I don't want to take away from it, but it's also a thing of this should have been done under the Obama administration. I mean, we're
10 years,
we're decades late here,
late
and we're so late to the game. The most that this could do is sort of kickstart, a little bit of production here. Also, we should temper our expectations because what they say in this Bloomberg piece, which I still don't really understand why they framed it as Cold War powers, is weird. But anyway, the president's signature is a big signal, they say, but it's incumbent on the Congress to appropriate dollars that are commensurate with the challenge because the DPA, the Defense Production Act, is a, quote, small piggy bank, considering it must cover sectors from aerospace and defense to the automotive industry. So president's signature, him taking executive action, that's good. Now we need Congress to appropriate the funds. We will see if they actually do that.
Yeah, and that's part of both the CHIPS Act and a lot of other stuff that's happening. Let's put this up there also from The Guardian, a great piece also that needs consideration, which is that the battery arms race and the Chinese monopolization of this is really stunning. I mean, I just read you some of those numbers, but it's important because also it can show you what Chinese soft power, look, I'm not saying our soft power is great, but Chinese soft power in Africa is not pretty. And they quote a lot of Congolese miners here talking about how they're overworked, they're treated completely terribly. Quote, they like to raise their voices even for a small fault. You are punished. The Chinese are there to control the Congolese. This is a worker who actually works at one of those majority-owned Chinese mines in the Congo and is controlled by that country. And why it matters is that they've been playing the long game here for a long time. I mean, their batteries, and I've even heard friends who live in California who have access to some of these Chinese electric cars. Let's be honest here. These are great cars. They're very, very good, functional cars.
Really?
They have a long range. They drive really well. I mean, look, Tesla's awesome, but we have to be honest here that real competition is coming down the line. And given the fact that apparently we don't believe in tariffs anymore in this country, it would not surprise me whatsoever in order to see a Chinese electric vehicle company take significant market share in the United States, especially if they can drive the price down.
This is also such a missed opportunity from the Trump administration because, I mean, for all his talk about China, on the things that would have actually mattered, asleep at the switch.
Yes.
And I mean, I think part of that just comes from, he's an fundamentally unserious person.
Yeah, but the people who work for him, they should know.
Right. And I think part of that also, though, is because you have so much climate denialism and this for a long time, the idea of electric vehicles was this sort of smeared as this liberal hippy-dippy thing. To his credit, I think Elon Musk has helped to change
Elon changed that
impression with his just shit posting online, but whatever.
I'll take it.
Yeah, if that helps move the entire country in a better direction, that's fine. But this is, if they actually wanted to compete with China, stand up to China, forge a different type of relationship, these are the type of things that they would have been doing. And I think it says, it's revealing, not that it's surprising, that they weren't engaged in anything significant that actually would have positioned us in a better place.
Like you said, look, this is tip of the iceberg, but this is exactly the type of stuff that we need to see. We need to set these precedents in Washington, get the Congress moving, and actually begin production. Because if we want to win any semblance of the future, do you guys like paying, in LA where I was, $6.50 a gallon? No, it's totally crazy. We need to have it so that you have the ability for actual middle class and poor people to buy electric cars. I would say that is the biggest hurdle right now. Right now, it's a luxury vehicle. That's fine. If you can afford it, it's awesome. But we need to make it so that it's downstream and an actual cost effective and make the companies then invest in that big time. So this is a very small step in that direction. We want to applaud it. So let's move on to the next part of here. Another important thing that the Biden administration is considering doing today, although I have some mixed quibbles with it. Let's put this up there on the screen. The United States currently is weighing the largest ever draw from the Emergency Oil Reserve, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. This has not yet been announced, but what the administration is considering, and the announcement could come as soon as today, is the release of 1 million barrels a day from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Now, there's a couple of things that are important to note here. Will 1 million barrels a day make a difference? Yes and no. So crude oil on Wednesday still is trading at $105 a barrel. Now, the issue here is, of course, oil is a global market in the way that it's priced. So will 1 million barrels a day significantly have an impact on price? Energy analysts are mixed. At the same time, it is still important for the administration to do something in order to lower the price of gas. So I went ahead and I asked a couple of energy analysts late last night whether this is a good thing. So here's what one says. I'm not going to quote him directly. He says, the one good thing is that they're supposedly planning on doing it slowly rather than one big shot. However, if it is not paired with other efforts to fix the imbalance, then they are not going after the systemic problem they have in the oil markets. So part of the issue, as we've explained, and I'll do it just very briefly again, is that basically investors in Wall Street financed 10 years of shale oil drilling here in America. They took a bath because of COVID, and they lost over $500 billion. So right now, high oil prices and the high profits the oil companies have, that's paying back the investors for all the cash that they lost previously. We've already had oil company CEOs say, we would not drill if oil is even $200 a barrel. Pioneer's CEO literally said that on live television. Why does that matter? It means there is a capital imbalance in the oil market. Only the government can fix that. We have not yet seen any effort in order to fix that specific part, and that's going to require some pain on the oil company's part too, to be like, hey, you guys are going to have to drill, we're going to have to make this up, you can't just reap massive profits off of us, but there's none of that conversation happening yet. We had that guy Skanda Amarnath on. He had a plan specifically using the SPR, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, in order to help set price and fix some of the imbalance in terms of drilling, which also has a sunset so that you don't finance these oil companies for the future. So it's a tiny little step, and it's kind of like the electric vehicle thing we just talked about. It's a tiny little step in the right direction.
Yeah.
Is it going to lower price to like $3.50 a gallon or $3? No, it's not going to do that at all.
Upon the news that they were considering this, prices did drop. Market prices did drop. So that shows that they think it will have some impact. Right now, the numbers are the U.S. consumes about 20 million barrels of oil a day.
Yeah.
So when you're thinking about 1 million barrels of, I mean, it's still...
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, it's something. Yeah. It's something. And I think probably it's honestly more greater significance is in the political messaging, as you said. People are telling pollsters, and this is really across the board, that the Biden administration is not focused on the issues that they care most about, that the number one issue that they are concerned about that is eating into their budgets, making it impossible for them to make ends meet, is inflation. So this is an attempt to say, look, we're doing something here that's significant. It's more than has ever been done before in terms of releases from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. So we shall see. I mean, the probably more significant to the price of gas is the fact that you have these new lockdowns in China.
Oh, yeah.
Reducing
that is the single most
gas consumption because, I mean, that's what happened, of course, when we had COVID across around the globe and lockdowns with regards to COVID is you had prices just drop through the floor. I mean, at one point, like going negative on oil futures, and it was crazy. So that will probably have more of an impact. And we have already seen gas prices tick down a little bit through no doing of the Biden administration. On the other hand, the fact, as you covered, Saagar, on Tuesday, the fact that you do have these lockdowns in China makes all sorts of other parts of our supply chain completely screwed up. And then you layer on top of that, looming food crisis that Biden says is, quote, going to be real. Going to be real because of the war, because of sanctions and all of this. And it's still a pretty grim landscape.
Biden just has this terrible ability to be like, yeah, this is bad, but then do nothing about it. I mean, look, I just gave him credit for the DPA and for oil. I think that's great. But we need some real strategic plans here. Everything from them is totally half-assed.
Not just for the next month, but for the next decade, for the next 20 years.
Yeah, there's so much that we have to do.
This is the moment when you could set us up. I mean, that's the one thing. When you have this kind of crisis and the stakes are really clear and people, really get how all these pieces are so fundamental and, you're just kind of tinkering around the margins. Nip and tuck on this and that thing. It's wildly insufficient.
I can't be the only one. I recently checked my power bill. The thing is completely out of control.
Oh,
so,
it's crazy.
There's a lot of people out there. People are paying a lot of money, both at the pump, in terms of food, in terms of gas. I mean, this is all stuff that really adds up for normal folks. So this is the time when you could do something about it, but we're broken record whenever it comes to that.
Indeed.
Hey guys, we're going to be totally upfront with you. This is the most perilous time that we have ever operated in.
It is so difficult just to try to sort through the news, but even more importantly, to bring you accurate information as this wave of lockdown and censorship spreads across the nation.
Yeah, look, if you can become a premium subscriber today at breakingpoints.com, you're going to help us build out a vibrant, independent media ecosystem, which is free of mainstream pressure. We can't tell you how important that is at a time like this.
Yep, that's right. Go to breakingpoints.com to subscribe. We love you guys, and we appreciate you so much.